Yes, you've really got to hear this story. So, hi again, folks. Thank you so much again for tuning into Caribbeanology as I tell this rather interesting story about one of my trips to Guyana. Um, yeah, it's a little cool today. Weather is much nicer than it was yesterday, but since I'm sitting in the shade, it's a little bit cool. So, sorry for my little look here, but I'll try to see if I can make it through this video. So, it's not cold, but because I'm in the shade, there's a breeze blowing up the corridor here, so it's a little cool. So I'm just deciding to sit outside again, because if I sit inside and try to do this video, my son is not going to be having it. Speaking of my son, I noticed that he bit up a couple of things over here. Anyway, oh, one other thing, I'm just hoping the wind is not affecting the sound quality. You know, hearing the whooshing and everything coming through the microphone. Hopefully that is not the case, but let's see if I can make it through this video, okay? As some guys plays some gospel music across the street. Yeah, he's over there playing some gospel music, so hopefully it's not coming through or coming through loud enough. Anyway, this story that happened was I was going to Guyana perhaps on my uh, fourth or fifth trip. Don't remember which one it was, but I guess if I give some backstory to what's going on here. My wife is from Guyana, as I mentioned before. When I met her, she was living in Guyana. And when I say met her, I don't mean met her in person. I met her through a mutual friend, but I started talking to her on the internet because she was living in Guyana while I live over here in the States. We started speaking in around May of 2013, but I did not go to see her until February of 2014. So we did a whole lot of talking leading up to that point. February 2014 was her birthday. That's when I went down to see her. And of course, I'm married to her right now, so you know things did work out pretty well. Still working out very well. Just one of the best decisions I made in my life in marrying that woman. She is just absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to do a video soon where you guys will be able to see some photos of her. That said, I went back down in May of 2014, and that's when we got engaged. And the following year, March of 2015, that's when we got married in Guyana. And then I went back down in November of 2015 to Guyana to see her again. Couldn't go an entire year without seeing her. All this time while this is going on, um, I am putting the paperwork process together for her to get, I hope I'm saying this right, a visa to come on over here. Now, she never had any desire to really come to the United States. As a matter of fact, when I met her, she was thinking about moving to Antigua, Guyana, Antigua, Trinidad, or Jamaica to pursue a law degree. But I couldn't move at the time because I had some things going on, so she decided to make the sacrifice to come over here and stay with me, at least for now, because yeah, we're trying to get out of this place. So after she did so, sorry, I shouldn't say after she did so. What I decided to do was go back down to Guyana in April of 2016 when she was ready to go to the embassy to complete her interview for the visa process. So I decided I was going to go down to be with her. I didn't have to be there, but I decided it was a perfect excuse for me to go. And it also looks pretty nice when it's a couple and you're there with the person. It just makes it look more genuine to these immigration officers. Again, she could have gone by herself, and I'm sure she would have gone to just fine. But I decided to just go down there to be with her. So planned out the trip. Decided I'm going to head down to go to see her. Now, back then, there were some differences with things that's going on right now, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I don't know how big Uber was back then, 2016. I guess they were still around, but I wasn't dealing with them at the time. I didn't feel like taking a taxi because it was like $80, $90 to get out there to the airport. Now the flight was leaving at about 1:20 in the morning to head down. It was going to land in Guyana around 6 or 7 o'clock. And I think this time of the year, I think Guyana was an hour ahead. something in that, something along that line. So what I did was I decided, you know what, I'm going to just take the train. Now, for those of you not familiar with how it works here in New York City, um, there are a couple of trains. I think the E train is one, the A train is the other, that takes you to a stop way out in Queens, close to JFK Airport, that then drops you off there, and then you go upstairs or downstairs and you catch another train known as the Air Tram, which takes you directly to the airport, to the various terminals that are there. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to take the train. Taking the train was going to cost me a total of, when everything was said and done, less than $10. Taking an Uber or one of those, a taxi, would have cost me close to $100. So since I had the time in my hands and it was just me traveling by myself, I said, you know what, let me just go ahead and do this. So I hop on the train, I want to say about a good 5 hours before the flight was scheduled to leave. So I get going, jump on my train, get downtown, I cross over to the A train. Um, but the reason why I was taking the A train as opposed to the E train, which I normally would take, because you get to the E train quicker from where I'm coming from than you get to the A train. But the reason I was taking the A train was because she has an aunt that lives in Queens, and her aunt knew I was going to Guyana and wanted me to take something down for her mother, which would be my wife's grandmother. So she wanted me to just stop by and pick the item up on the way to the airport so I can take it with me so I can hand it to her mother when I landed there. Now, the plan was I was just going to get to the subway station, the station itself, which is elevated above ground. Their stop is elevated above ground. So I was just going to get to that stop. I was just going to be on my cell phone speaking to her son, who would be at the stop waiting for me, and I would tell him which car I'm in, which number I'm in, and once the door opens, I'll just grab the product from him and off. I wouldn't have to get off the train or make any stops or anything. So when I get to the A train, about 3 stops in, come to find out, yeah, please forgive the gospel music that's going on across the street, and I hope it doesn't distract me. But anyway, once I get on the train, the A train, about 3 stops in, and another thing you have to know is that the A train runs express through Brooklyn and into Queens, at least at that time of the day when I was traveling. So what would normally be a 21, 22, 23 stop ride to get all the way to the Air train would be more or less like 6 stops. So get on the train, I'm like, okay, I'll be there in more than enough time. When I get down there, and to the 3rd stop on the A train, the train came to a stop and they just sat in the subway, and I'm just trying to find out what's going on, but I wasn't too worried. I'm like, I have more than enough time. I mean, what could they be holding up for? Come to find out, what they were having was a fight that broke out on the train. And because the fight broke out on the train, they had to stop the train. They had to call the police to come in to investigate what was going on, make the necessary arrests or whatever. So while we were sitting there, not only did that happen, the conductor came on the intercom and said, we're sorry, but all trains going toward Queens into Brooklyn were going to be going local. Local meaning it's going to stop at every single stop along the way. So now I'm just there like, oh my goodness, this can't be happening. But I said, you know what, still have more than enough time. I should be able to make it to the airport at least within 2 hours of the flight leaving. So we go on a train. But the other problem that came up was whatever happened that caused them to go local looked like there was something that happened on the express track that spilled over onto the local track. So the train now was just going at a painfully slow speed, because I guess they had to call in the crew to clean up whatever happened or whatever transpired on the tracks. So each stop we would go to, spend 5-10 minutes, then it move, then it go very slow into the tunnel, then another 4 to 5 minutes or so. The other problem that I have had on my hand is that I was not aware that the train that I take from where I live was the test train, where they set up routers and wireless signals inside the stations. So my station was a test station, so we had that availability. I was always on my phone when I'm in the train. When I get to a station, I could message someone, I could call someone, I could check my internet real fast. I could do that. Did not realize though the A train had not gotten that technology as yet. The A train line had not gotten the technology. So when I would come to these stops, I wanted to pick up my phone so I could call ahead to let my wife's cousin know, hey, we're running into this problem. This is what's going on. So now I'm stuck in a particular position. Now I can't call him. He doesn't know what's going on. So finally, when I finally got to the stop, a long time later, when I finally got to his stop, I try to call ahead. Now you have to understand that his stop is the first stop outside the tunnel. So outside of the tunnel, well, as the train is going through a tunnel, his stop is the first stop. So I've got to make this call real quick in case he's waiting on the platform for me. So I called him as the train came up. I got a signal, hey, what's going on? I'm sorry. And I explained to him what's going on. He said, yeah, man, I didn't think you were coming through again. So I went back home, man. I'm up in bed right now. And I'm like, what? I said, no, this is what transpired. He said, all right, tell you what, I'll come down to the station. I'll come and meet you. So he pulls on his clothes. I had now no choice but to get off at the stop itself. Instead of just grabbing it, keep continuing on. Now I had to get off and wait for him. So he took about 15 minutes to come back to the subway or to the platform. So he came upstairs, met me, gave me the package, put everything in. At the time, he had an app that I didn't have on my phone that could tell when the next train was coming. At this time, I think I was down to maybe about an hour and 15 minutes before the flight was about to leave. So now I'm cutting it kind of close. International flights, they generally want you to be there 2 hours before the flight leaves. So now I'm really cutting it close, about an hour and 15 minutes. So he came upstairs, he checked his app, and he said, hey, you know what? I don't think the next train is coming for another 15 minutes. And I was just like, oh man, because that hour of the night, the trains are running much slower, further between, there are not as much people traveling. So I'm sitting there and I'm just thinking to myself, oh man, what are we gonna do? He said, hey, tell you what, let's go downstairs and let's drive, see if we can catch a taxi. So we go downstairs, it starts raining. So we're downstairs now. He called up a taxi on the phone and he called. We're standing there. 5 minutes later, no taxi. 10 minutes later, no taxi. So we called and we asked them, hey, what's going on? The person had a very, very heavy Spanish accent. And it looks like they misunderstood us, or we misunderstood them. So there was nothing going on. Please excuse the sound you're going to hear here in a minute. Let me just give it a break. All right. This is your typical New York City day when the weather gets sort of nice. Anyway, so he calls a taxi. We're waiting. There's nothing. So he makes another reservation for a taxi to come through. And we're there waiting. 10 minutes go by, 15 minutes go by. And I guess he called the base. And when they called the base, they found that a taxi was at some other location. So now we had to wait for about another 10 minutes for this person to come by. When all of this was finished, whatever transpired, whatever time elapsed or whatever, the flight was leaving at 1:20. Would you believe it's now 12:49 a.m. and I'm still 17 minutes away from the airport? So I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I'm going to miss this flight. It's pouring rain. The taxi shows up, jump in. Now I didn't want the guy to speed because it's raining and I don't want to lose my life, but he went at a pretty decent clip. When he pulled up to the curb at JFK Airport to let me out, I got there at 1:05 a.m. and the flight was leaving at 1:20. I rushed out, came up, pulled up to the counter, and of course everybody's kind of like packing up for the night and everything. So the supervisor is there and I said, hey, I got to get on this flight. And he's looking at me like you could almost hear the smirk, the laugh, like you got to be crazy, He said, hey, look, I can probably get you on the flight, but you're gonna have to leave your bags because bags are closed and they're not taking any more bags. And I'm like thinking, who am I gonna leave my bag with? I came here in a taxi, there's nobody outside waiting for me. I've got to go with my bag. So I had a big pulley bag, which is a fortunate thing. He said, look, I don't know if you can try this. He said, but you can go over to TSA and you can try to see if they can get that bag through the x-ray machine. When I looked over at TSA, because I could see from where it was, fortunately for me, there was nobody at TSA. That hour in the morning, there wasn't really anybody really on any flights. Usually there are flights going to China and other places, but I was lucky that there seemed not to have been any flights leaving at that time. So there were like about two or three people in the TSA line. So they went ahead, did whatever they had to do with my paperwork, and he said, go ahead, you can see if you can make it, So I go over, and the person takes my bag, puts it up on the x-ray machine, and it can't fit through. And I'm like, oh my goodness, man, I'm gonna miss this flight. But one of the TSA guys came over, he said, hold on a minute, and he took the bag and he folded it up, crushed it up. Fortunately, I didn't have anything in there like foods or whatever. Crushed it up, and he pushed it through, and it made it through. I'm on the other side now. Once I realized my bag was going to go through, I have my belt hanging around my neck. No, my belt. Yeah, my belt was over my neck. Had one shoe on, one shoe off. Um, I'm all scattered all over the place. This is now about 1:15, and the flight was on time. It's leaving at 1:20. So I now had to bolt like Usain Bolt through JFK Airport. And I just started with this running, just running, my belt all over the place. My shoes not even tied on properly. I'm running, my bag is hanging off of my shoulder because I had a backpack and the pulley. The pulley, I'm pulling in and it's leaning and flipping and everything. I had to drag it a couple of times. And I'm just running. And I tell you, I could feel the heels of my feet touching my back. That's how fast I was trying to move. Finally, I got to the gate. And the gate, of course, was not just right there, right from TSA. I had to run basically the length of the airport just to get to the gate. When I get there, there's one lady there. There are no passengers in sight. She's sitting there, and she had just finished locking the door, and she turned around, and she saw me, and she's like, "Excuse me, sir, can I help you?" I said, and I could see the flight. I said, "Ma'am, I'm trying to get on that flight." She said, "Sir, you can't get on that flight right now. We locked the gate and everything." I said, "Ma'am, I need to get on that flight." And I gave her my sob story. I said, "Look, my wife has got to go to the embassy and whatever." And she was from Trinidad just based on her accent. And so she knew what I was trying to tell her. I said, "My wife is going to be at the embassy tomorrow." And it wasn't tomorrow. It was actually the following day. And I said, "I've got to be there, and I have some paperwork I've got to bring down and whatever." So she was like, "Okay, just hold on." And then she said, then she got on the phone, and then she called down to the gate and let them know that there was one more passenger. And she said, okay, give me your stuff. And I gave her whatever I had to give her. She checked it in. She did whatever she did. She opened back up the door for me. And then I ran down the jetway. And when I got down there, there were 3 more people still standing in the jetway about to go on the flight. And I'm just there sweating, breathing hard, hunched over, had my pulley with me. Then, of course, they came up. The guys who were putting the bags in the plane, I guess they came up the ladder or up the steps, realized that I had my bag, came, took my bag, and then took it back downstairs to put it into the belly of the plane. I finally sat down, and I was the last passenger in the flight. Sat down, sweating, breathing hard, and just breathed this big sigh of relief. Now, the interesting thing about it, my then girlfriend, who's now my wife, she was not aware any of this was going on. Normally she would not sleep when I go on my flights, but since I had been down there so often, I guess she felt comfortable to go to sleep knowing that I would be okay. So she was not aware all this madness was going on. I finally sat down in the plane. I looked out the window, and I just took this big sigh, like, and I think I slept most of the flight all the way down. And it was a story I had to tell when I got down there to Guyana. Could not believe that I made it on an international flight with 5 minutes left to go. And I was nowhere close to the airport, and I was still able to make it. The flight did not exactly pull out at 1:20, probably pull out more like 1:35 after everyone got on there. But everyone was pretty much on the flight bus by about 1:25 or so. So it really turned out to be an interesting situation. I am so thankful. I have never really missed a flight in my life. This would have been a first. So I'm glad this was not the first flight that I missed, because I really wanted to be in Guyana, and I really wanted to get down there. And I know if I missed the flight, I was going to have to stay at the airport and then pay some more money to book a different flight or to go on a different flight the following day, which would have just thrown everything off. So I'm glad that I was able to make it. But I just wanted to share this story with you guys. So Usain Bolt has nothing on me. I made it through that airport in record time to get down to my gate to get on my flight. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed the story, and I hope the sound quality is pretty good because the wind is actually blowing. And again, the gospel music is going on over there. Hopefully it's not drowning out my voice. Anyway, you guys, take care. Thank you for tuning into the story. I have more stories to tell. Just stay tuned to Caribbeanology to hear them.